Hello everyone, and welcome to this special weekday Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by eBay Motors Group, with Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters across the franchised and independent dealer sectors.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this special Motor Trade Radio weekday podcast interview. Today we're focusing on BYD, the Chinese EV brand, which debuted in the UK in March and has quickly established a physical dealer network through partnering with some big names, including Arnold Clark, Pendragon and LSH, and it has some ambitious plans to increase its national footprint. Here to discuss their plans is Head of Sales Simon Bisp. So welcome to the podcast, Simon. I'm guessing this must be a particularly busy time for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. First of all, yes, it's we're still a very small team in the UK. We're looking to grow quickly in terms of our team as well as the network. But yes, it's there's certainly a lot going on.
Yeah. No, welcome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think there's in headlines once or twice every now and again. I think Simon BYD tends to get the odd mention here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a huge amount of noise in the industry press, certainly, and my social feeds, etc., are very heavily industry biased. So I see it all the time and everywhere. So our next task is to share that noise and brand awareness with the buying public.
Definitely. So before we get on to too much detail about BYD, because there is a lot to talk about, I just want to sort of, for the listeners, go through your background in the sector. And as you know, be very familiar with many listeners of the time as a sales director at Peugeot, amongst other things. If you want to talk us through that.
Yeah, so I was, previous to joining BYD, I was with Peugeot initially for 22 years. So I joined as a graduate and did all of the usual roles you would expect with the Peugeot brand. So after sales and sales, and worked in distribution, and then of course the group grew, so we became PSA, taking on Citroën, and thereafter DS, and then of course the acquisition of Vauxhall, and then most latterly the creation of Stellantis. So it's a varied experience, but always in one place. But my most immediate role before joining BYD, I was actually a European role, was looking after Italy and Benelux. But previous to that, until June of last year, I was sales director for Peugeot for 6 years.
And I mean, now you've been with BYD since May of this year, I believe.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, obviously, you talked through your long and varied career with Stellantis and Peugeot, PSA, etc., and now you're obviously with BYD. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what attracted you to BYD? And I'm assuming some of the questions we've got for you subsequently will share some of that. But you obviously, from a long established career with under that inevitable Stellantis in the end there to BYD.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's really interesting because I think it's sort of my journey to BYD will mirror those of our customers in reality, from discovering the brand full stop, because obviously it's not well known certainly in the UK, and then appreciating the scale of the operation and the actual heritage, as well as the quality of the product. So yeah, certainly, I was well set to be a lifer, if one of those exists. I think within Stellantis, I certainly wasn't looking for a new opportunity. But when the BYD opportunity came up, and I started to research, I think it was firstly the scale of the operation is mind blowing. In fact, when you look in terms of the operation within China. Specifically, 600,000 employees. That's worldwide, but obviously predominantly in China. But also, it's the brand, even though it's very new in terms of automotive or car making, it's got a heritage in itself, which is within battery production, and it's got a mission and a story. So our stated mission is that we want to help to cool the earth by 1 degree, which sounds quite dramatic, but when you look at, as I said, the scale of the operation, but also the fact that as a company we produce a complete full market new energy solutions. So it's not just passenger car, it's bus, it's truck, as well as battery storage and also new energy production in terms of solar and those types of things. So the actual story behind the brand is really compelling as well. And I think there was an attraction there in terms of coming at the EV revolution or transition from a different angle. So obviously, used to my previous experience, it was all about how do we make it work within an existing model lineup or future model lineup, and how do we re-gear the business. Whereas BYD started making batteries, making phone batteries actually, and then developed into car batteries later, and then started producing the cars thereafter. So a completely different angle to come at it, which certainly intrigued me, and was something I wanted to be part of. And also, I spent a long time working for an OEM, and I didn't really see any attraction in doing a similar thing for another OEM of the same nature. But this is like a startup with a difference, because it's a startup in the UK but backed by an absolutely huge structure and organization in China. So a hugely exciting challenge as well. The other bit I should say which was really important, is the fact that we BYD have a complete control of the vertical supply chain. So everything on the vehicle, with the exception of the tires and the glass, is BYD built. And that includes the now infamous semiconductors. So, for someone who went through the pain of several years of supply crisis after supply crisis, that was music to my ears as well. So another attraction to the brand.
And it's a 30-year-old brand, isn't it? Essentially, I mean, it's not all right. There's been this transition from what they did batteries into the now cars, but the business is 30-year-old, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. So 1995, the company was started by our current chairman. So it's a proper entrepreneur story. So started in, as I say, in battery production, manufacturer. I think it's 1 in 4 mobile phones has had a BYD battery in it over the years. So many listening will have used BYD product without perhaps knowing about it.
Yeah, fascinating insight there. And I think a lot of listeners will be surprised, Simon, by just how long BYD has been around as a company and indeed producing cars. And I was interested in one of the stats that you put out recently, celebrating the 5 millionth unit milestone. So 5 million vehicles in, is that 28, 29 years? And that's a combination of EVs and PHEVs, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what we would call the new energy vehicles, is the 5 million, and in fact it's much shorter than that, because our first car was produced in 2005, but it's been in the last 2 or 3 years that production of new energy vehicles has absolutely rocketed. So we became new energy only, so EV and plug-in hybrid only in 2021. So prior to that, we were producing petrol vehicles as well. So it's been in the last few years that really has accelerated to that level. So it's quite astonishing, really.
Yeah, and as we know, BYD launched in the UK in March. Where else is it available in Europe and other markets?
Well, the start was Norway, which I think is quite common, because obviously they were the earliest adopters in terms of EV in Europe, and obviously have followed that transition through to something close to 80% penetration, I think, in terms of full electric vehicles. But it's, we've launched, or we've gone on sale in 16 countries now in Europe in less than 12 months. So it's easier now to say where we're not selling in Europe rather than where we are. Really entered the market at speed once that decision was taken to start selling in Europe. So it's a very aggressive plan and launch.
And was the UK one of the first markets after Norway?
Yes, I mean the strategy from the company, and it was the case in Norway, is to use a dealer plus model, as we call it, which is effectively to partner with importers, distributors within those countries, except for the major markets, so the big five markets in Europe, where we've set up a national sales company, which we've done in the UK, and that was the UK was really the first to do that, and we will become the sort of the benchmark in terms of continuing that journey over the next couple of years.
And Curtis touched on a little bit of that at the start, and obviously that physical infrastructure and that through the NSC and the dealer network in the UK. And, needless to say, it's grown rapidly. As Curtis said, they're partnering with some of the big AM100 franchise dealer groups, in namely sort of Arnold Clark, Pendragon, Stratstones, and LSH. I mean, we talked, I think, previously on a podcast of the growth aspirations in terms of those outlets. What's the plan in terms of that national coverage of numbers of outlets and partners in the UK market?
Yeah, well, I think firstly it was obviously a clear decision that when we launched, we needed to partner with existing franchise dealers within the UK. It's just absolutely integral to our startup being, not having the infrastructure within the country, not having the knowledge of the market, etc. As a company, obviously individually within the team, we do. So it was really important. But also in terms of brand awareness and also in terms of customer confidence as well. So we've looking to partner with really well established brands in terms of the dealer network, and those that have built long and trusting relationships with local customers. It's really important that we get that link straight away. So we've obviously started with those larger partners and others that also have the ability to grow their footprint with us as we grow and as the opportunity grows. So our very broad network plan includes something in the region of 100 sales points, which we would aim to get to within the next 24 months. But that's, we're prepared to flex that plan based on what we learn about or what changes within trends in consumer behavior, because it's not necessarily the case that we need to have a full traditional dealership in every point where we think that we might sell cars potentially as we go forward. So that's not a fixed plan, but it's one that we've started on a strategy of working with partners, as I say, that have that ability to grow and to add sales points, organically as the demand grows for the product. Clearly, regardless of buying behavior, after sales is an absolute priority in terms of physical representation. So we want to make sure that, for warranty, service and repair work, that we are conveniently located. So again, we would look to do that within the wider footprint of the partners that we work with, to make sure that we have nationwide after sales coverage as a priority as quickly as we can.
And I suppose it's difficult to say now, and to your point there, you've got to have this target that flexes with demand and appetite and the way the market shifts. And the market is certainly shifting generally in and not just in the UK, but generally the market is shifting. What's happening with UK government and other things. But what is the kind of 5-year plan for BYD now? I mean, we're talking some big numbers already in a very, very short period of time. What is their long-term aspirational plan? Do they have one? Can you share that?
In terms of network size or in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah,
sales?
where you expect. I mean, because obviously, we've got some big numbers in terms of the 5 million unit milestone. There's obviously there's things around sort of BYD versus Tesla in the market. Where do you see BYD in the UK in the next sort of 5 years in terms of footprint and
Yeah,
outlet?
so I think that 100 sales points that I talked about is probably the extent of the sales network that we will need in terms of traditional dealer premises. Clearly, as I said, in terms of an omni-channel approach and making sure that we have representation and visibility where our customers are. We'll obviously look as well in terms of retail locations and having some different setups within that as well if we think that we need that. But yes, that around 100 sales points is probably the where we'll finish.
And is there a market share? I mean, you look at the 5%. Is that so? Do they have a sort of market share target
Yes,
you're looking for?
it's really interesting because I've obviously well familiar with how OEMs work and how volumes are created, and obviously everybody previous to the COVID pandemic and to the the supply crisis, normally everyone would build to a stated ambition, and if you added up the total of everyone's stated ambition, it came to about 158%. And then you built to that number, and then you had to sell to that number. So I think that there's a chance that could change. Obviously, with the cost of production, the cost of vehicles, and everything else, that might, and the fact that now with a lead time and factory order becoming the norm, that we might get to a position where you sell based on the actual demand you've got rather than having to create that demand to production. Certainly from our perspective, we're not constrained in any way in terms of how many vehicles we produce. So we do intend to work in that way, is that we will request the number of vehicles that we think we've got demand for and grow. Obviously, you need to set out with an ambition. I think our broad ambition is to as quickly as possible get to around 6% of the EV market, and then obviously try to hold that position as the EV penetration grows in the UK, which inevitably it has to do over the next 7 years or whenever the deadline actually
might end up to be. Yes, yeah, good point.
But that is that allows us to at least talk to our partners about volume predictions as best we can. But we will talk a bit, I think, about future range and the product lineup. The opportunity is huge, and it's about the job we can do in terms of introducing the brand into the UK and how quickly we can gain confidence and start to get demand for our products.
Now, Simon, I think what's going to interest a lot of listeners is that you're still in very early stages of rolling out the dealer network, and 5 months on, you've got these partnerships with some major dealer group brands, and you've started to establish the first sales outlets, albeit I guess you've only got a handful at the moment. What's your plan for recruiting dealers, certainly to hit some of those ambitious targets that you're talking about, 100 sales points within 24 months? Are you looking for new partners, and will you open up representation to, say, some of the smaller groups and regional groups?
Yeah, we've already done that. In fact, so we've opened up in Exeter with City West Country and we've opened in Leeds with DM Keith, and there are more in the plan. So as a broad plan, we want to restrict the number of partners as far as we can. I want to make sure that we have a number of partners that allows us to talk to our network as a whole, ideally. And as I said before, so that's a case of choosing partners that might start with one particular prominent sales point, but then look to expand within a regional territory, as I said, as demand grows and the sales numbers dictate. So that's the plan. At the moment, we've got in the region of 35 sales points identified with about 15 partners, and we would hope that at least 25 of those were actual open and trading by the end of this year. So in terms of a number of partners, that doesn't leave us much space for many more. But obviously there are some areas of the country where we would still need to look out for new partners to work with in those territories, which we're in discussion with a lot. So as part of my role at the moment, network development is a big part of it, and it's been fascinating the number of conversations that I'm having from interested investors who are obviously attracted to the brand as I was.
Yeah, I can imagine your phone must be red hot at the moment.
Absolutely.
What can you tell us about some of the investment costs for anyone listening who might be looking for a new franchise?
It's really difficult to talk about that, in fact, because the way that we will be launching and starting with various partners will differ quite dramatically. So from a standalone standalone site, which is with showroom and workshop dedicated to the brand, compared to those where we go into shared showrooms or we go into dedicated facilities, but within a multi-franchise site. So it varies massively in terms of those costs, and it's, I think, more for me in terms of my initial discussions, it's been about the partnership and the fact that we've both got that ambition to grow. I know certainly my colleagues from China will walk into any showroom that's proposed and immediately look for the extra space because they can see the opportunity. They can see what's coming.
Yeah,
so,
they know
yes,
what's in the pipeline.
This is all very good for now, but where do we go? When the full range comes. So that's got to be the consideration. It's not just the initial startup cost. It's where that opportunity lies to expand and grow with the brand as we do.
And I mean, we've seen all the press, and it's not unique to any particular brand, but in terms of the consolidation of the marketplace and the way you talk in terms of that open point and changing consumer behaviours and the omni-channel and direct selling, is that driving more dealers to approach you now as a brand to look at opportunities in some of these, whether that's JLR, some of the Renault, Stellantis brands that these dealer partners may be looking at alternative uses for their premises? Are they coming to you now and seeing you as an opportunity for them?
Without a doubt, it's absolutely, and obviously it helps that obviously I've got some contacts with those people from the past. They obviously feel comfortable picking up the phone and asking the question. But there is so much change, isn't there, that it's not just about those that are downsizing their networks potentially, but it's also where certain brands' products lineup is going to move in terms of moving out of certain more generalist space, for example, into more premium or luxury end of the market. So that is a consideration for certain brands as well. And obviously that just the cost of operating a dealership site it's long been, I think, an important factor that investors look to spread that cost and to maximise the footprint that they've got. So yeah, it's the approaches that I've had have been from a wide variety of groups with current brands across the spectrum, really, as you would expect. And as I said, that leads to different discussions about how we go about starting up in those locations. But obviously, our priority is that we need to have a facility that befits the brand, and we won't want to be in any way seen to be, a temporary position on a site or seem to be squeezed into a corner. We definitely want that representation to reflect where we are as a brand.
And Simon, in terms of product, as a brand, you've very much hit the ground running. Can you just take us through the rollout of what will soon be a 3-car lineup and the sectors that they're actually in?
Yeah, so we started with the Atto 3, it's a C SUV vehicle. So that was our first vehicle on sale from March, when we opened our first sites. And we're preparing now for the launch of our next car, which is a C hatch Dolphin. And then immediately after that, very closely after that, we'll be launching the Seal, which is a D saloon, I suppose, a sports coupe in terms of trying to define it in terms of market segment. So that, as well as recruiting our network and getting up to speed, there's also that huge opportunity as well in terms of launching brand new models into the market as well, which all need their own attention and investment to do that. So it's a very, very exciting time.
And what sort of timeline are you looking at to have the Dolphin and the Seal on sale?
Well, so the Dolphin UK launch will be mid-September, and then we'll be on sale immediately, and we'll have a good supply of that vehicle coming into the country. So it will be on sale and hopefully driven away by customers in October. And Seal will be launch in October and on sale in November is the current planning.
Yeah, I mean that really is a rapid rollout, and I know that the product rollout is busy at the moment. But can you shed any light on what's on the immediate horizon? I mean, I've certainly read somewhere else that there's an off-roader due sometime in 2024.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and obviously the scope is massive, because the range in China is huge and really broad, and it's more a case in which order we bring those vehicles to the UK or to Europe on sale. In terms of what I do know is that we will be bringing out a D SUV, which will be a plug-in hybrid initially. There is a full EV version to come out later next year, but in terms of immediately in the Q1 2024, we'll be bringing that car to market. So that's a car with our DMI hybrid technology, which will bring a pure EV range of 100 kilometers and a full range combined of approaching 1,000 kilometers. So it's for us is an excellent vehicle in terms of those that are considering electric but not yet ready to make that full move. Obviously, 100 kilometers, 60 miles will take in a huge percentage of the average driver's journeys in full electric mode with that vehicle. So we've got some really high hopes for that car as well when that comes. And then in terms of what's next after that, it's again, it's equally exciting to speculate, really. There are increasing number of sub-brands of BYD in China. So we have Denza, Fangcheng Bao, which you'll have to forgive me for my pronunciation, and Yang Wang, which are up to, I don't know if you guys have seen any of the the Yang Wang stuff in terms of the U8 and the U9, but it's incredible, those vehicles. So it's a very large off-road vehicle and a hypercar effectively within that range. And then Denza is a luxury end of a premium end of the market as well in terms of those vehicles. And then we have another sub brand which is looking to focus on the SUV and the pickup market as well, which again are all going to be released in China in the coming months. So after that, it's then a question of what we do in terms of bringing those products to Europe and to the UK, whether it's under those sub brands or whether under the BYD brand is all to be decided. But the exciting thing for me is that the technology on those cars is absolutely at the cutting edge of what's possible. And that technology will flow through into our future product for BYD, regardless of the models, and that's the really exciting bit for me.
Yeah, and added to that, Simon, I know as a brand, BYD produces vans, light commercials for certainly the Chinese domestic market. Would there be an opportunity to bring light commercials over to the UK under BYD?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the actual the majority of what we do in China is in larger commercial vehicles, actually, in terms of truck and other vehicles. But yes, definitely in the planning is an LCV range, obviously full electric, with our blade technology, and that is planned to begin later next year and then into 2025 in terms of having a full range of light commercial vehicles on sale as well.
Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned blade technology there. I mean, whenever I'm having conversations about EV, the BYD blade technology is a conversation I do introduce, because it is cutting edge in terms of what it does and how it works, and it's been a development straight out of BYD. And I mean, just in terms of market, I mean, we talk about dealers there very, very heavily, but we must remember, there's a significant fleet market as well for BYD. I mean, you're talking D segment product there, the hybrid product and EV product and things areas such as Motability and other operators. I mean, clearly fleet is a significant target market for BYD.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be in terms of, if we're targeting the shares that I discussed earlier, then it absolutely has to be, because that's largely where the market is at the moment, in truth. So I think obviously the recent move from many manufacturers in terms of retail incentives on their EV product is obviously going to drive that forward, and the retail has to grow. Clearly, if the market penetration is going to grow, then that will be the case. But it's been and is the case across all countries really. EV adoption is very incentive led, and we saw that with initial retail response was quite strong with EV in the UK when there were government incentives to purchase, and as they've been removed but remain within the fleet environment, then that's obviously maintained that sort of focus. And the other thing also is of course the number of EVs available at the lower end of the market in terms of A, B, and even C segment has been until recently quite limited as well, just because the viability of those vehicles with the added cost of the battery technology is not been there. So I think while that's been the case and sort of SUV is dominated and larger cars, which are more appropriate in terms of the fleet market, then we've seen the fleet mix very, very high. But so we begin with Dolphin, and then we've got other A and B segment vehicles in the offing for future months, and I think that again we'll see an increase in the retail penetration for EV as well. So we'll as we say, look to grow our sales in those key markets as the demand grows.
And final question for you, Simon. Last week on the podcast, we were discussing a recent eBay Motor Group survey, which looked at awareness of some of the new EV brands, and it found 2/3 of those researched and their new and used car buyers hadn't heard of 10 new EV brands that were either coming or already on sale in the UK, including BYD and indeed Aura. What's BYD doing to establish an identity among car buyers?
Yeah, so it's been identified as one of our 3 key challenges is brand awareness, undoubtedly, because as we mentioned before, a lot of talk in the industry press and in industry circles about the brands. I think they're all sort of well known, but in terms of the wider car buying public, it's not getting that cut through. And again, one of those issues would be those who aren't naturally considering EV. It wouldn't necessarily come looking for those EV brands either. So it's a huge part of the job that we have to do, not just in getting the brand known, but also to make sure that the brand story I talked about is understood, and also to challenge some of the misconceptions that probably exist with regard to Chinese products, particularly in terms of the quality or anything else, and demonstrate that the quality is second to none, and the reason there are economics behind it is because there are efficiencies that come from so many years of experience with battery production and sourcing those materials to do that, which is obviously the biggest cost in terms of EV production. As I said earlier, the control over the vertical supply chain has its own economic benefits as well, and then massive economies of scale. So those are the reasons why there is a price benefit potentially. But in terms of technology and quality, these are unrivaled in terms of the quality of the products. I think I mentioned earlier, 600,000 employees worldwide for BYD. 60,000 of those are engineers, and I think there was some stat that said that 60% of those have got master's degrees in engineering. We, as our development team, file something in the region of 17 patents a day. So the output in terms of technology and advancement is unbelievable, and so the products are excellent in terms of build quality, but also in terms of the technology they deliver. So those are the things that we now need to work on to make sure that people consider the brand, and that they actually get to our showrooms and come and see for themselves the quality of the products we've got. So we will follow all of the usual channels to do that in the media. Clearly, social media has a massive part to play, but I think there's still the part for the traditional above the line marketing routes to get the brand out there and encourage people to find out more.
Yeah, and get them seen as well, isn't it? Get them on the board. The dealers, I think, without going over it again, that partnership within that dealer market, and some of those, not just the AM100 operators, but others that will be doing the local, because it needs to succeed. It'll succeed for you, it'll succeed for them. So, getting the vehicles out there and seen, and clearly there's some big ambitions. I think this week I'd seen, or last week, that they'd bought the Ford plant over in Brazil. Which is a significant sized plant. And that's obviously to serve that Latin America market, also looking at places like Mexico to serve North America and South America. So big ambitions, and I think more that are done, people see these cars, they become part of that choice, the list. It'll be on the list of choice for the consumer as well as the fleet operators.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, as we do a better job in terms of telling the benefits of EV, rather than it being something we need to rally against, as well as more people consider EV as their next vehicle, then that will naturally direct them towards EV specialist brands like ourselves as well. So those things combined will obviously introduce us to more people.
Definitely. I mean, it's been a fascinating chat, and we on the podcast, it doesn't go many weeks at all without mentioning BYD in some form or another around EV and that future. And it's the fact that you do the plug-in hybrid and the side of product there and commercial vehicles and some of that future planning is fascinating of what's on the horizon. So, needless to say, thank you for the time and joining us today, Simon. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm hoping that the listeners know a little bit more about BYD now. Understand the product, understand the background of BYD, where they've come from, and more importantly, where they're heading and the way they are entering the market. So, thank you from myself and Curtis for giving up your time today and sharing some of that insight.
No, you're welcome. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this special weekday Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by eBay Motors Group. Philip and Curtis will be back with the week's big motor retailing headlines on Saturday. Live, on demand, wherever you are, and on your podcast feed. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with Philip and Curtis, come on the show or send a press release, then email them at motortraderadio@yahoo.com. You can also join the Motor Trade Radio, LinkedIn and Facebook groups, or follow the podcast on Twitter. You've been listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, bringing you all the chatter that matters.